So today, this morning, for the next 45 minutes, 60 minutes, I'm going to share with you about the East Coast Plan, the infamous East Coast Plan. Hopefully, I can shed some light on what's upcoming for the East Coast from a broad picture perspective, from a macro level. So before we start, just a quick disclaimers. So EdgeProp is an independent platform. We are not a real estate agent or agency or developer or consultancy. So nothing in this masterclass actually constitutes an advice to buy or sell the property. If you're looking for advice on buying or selling property, perhaps you can reach out to Desmond earlier from ETCs. He'll be providing professional advice as well, okay? Now, today's agenda, just very quickly, bear with me here. Just want to share with you what you can expect from today's discussion. Is firstly, I want to share with you the key information about East Coast. Where are the specific areas that we will be focusing on East Coast? Because East Coast technically is very, very big, right? So I think we have to narrow down our selection and our focus to be a bit more focused for today's morning. So I'll share things like demographics, what are the current hotspots, where are the MRT lines, and what are some of the famous schools. Some of them also attended by the famous MPs and famous politicians. Maybe it's good to find out where they attended some of these schools. Then secondly, I will share with you the major transformations that are upcoming for this area. So primarily, I'll talk about the Thomson East Coast line, the MRT line, which is going to be a game changer for the East Coast. I'll talk about the Long Island concept. You may have heard of this in the news recently. What is it about? What is it for? And then I'll touch a bit about Bayshore Precinct, which is slightly further east. What are some of the plans that the government and URA has for that area? And then lastly, I'll just touch on the housing options that today. What are the trends like? What are the prices? How have they moved? As well as what are some of the sites and upcoming launches that you can actually watch out for in this area. So, and then we'll end with some Q&A at the end. Okay, so I'll jump straight into the key slide here. So today's focus, right, as I mentioned, East Coast is a very broad area, right? So we have to narrow down our selection to some areas to be a bit more focused. So I'll be talking primarily about District 15, right? The District 15 that basically actually encompasses the Marine Parade planning area. So if you think about the planning for Singapore, it's by districts, and then the planning areas are basically a subset of the districts, and then you have subzones that are part of the planning areas. So for today's discussion, I want to focus on District 15, which is made up of mainly Marine Parade, but also a certain part of Bedok. So up to the Upper East Coast Road, South Bedok area, closer to the coast. So these are the areas that I want to focus and touch on, because Bedok is actually quite big and quite broad. So it goes all the way up to Bedok Reservoir, closer, bounded by the Paya Lebar Air Base as well. But today I just want to focus more on the Bedok South area as well as the Marine Parade planning area. So now let's start by looking at the demographics, okay, for these two planning areas. So Marine Parade and also Bedok. So this data that I'm showing you is actually from the Census of Population 2020, okay? So if you look at, for example, the age demographics of Marine Parade, you will notice that generally it's made up of prime working adults, right? Between the age of 40 to 55, okay? So that is Marine Parade. So as we go through the slides, maybe keep these demographics as well as the income level, which I will share with you in the subsequent slide, in mind, because I think that will help you put things into perspective when we talk about prices and talk about the changes that are upcoming. Whereas for Bedok is generally relatively more mature, right? So but as I mentioned earlier, Bedok encompasses the further inland as well, not so much just the coast, but the entire Bedok planning area. We are talking about a relatively more mature population between the age of 55 to 65. So you can see that there are different. So Marine Parade generally younger, crowd, whereas Bedok tend to be relatively more mature. Now, how about the household profile, right? So households in Marine Parade, you will notice that there is a large group of tenants, right? 21% of the population or the households in Marine Parade are actually tenants versus 11% for the Bedok planning area. So why this is the case, I think you will see later in the subsequent slides why Marine Parade generally have a larger group of tenants. Okay, so this is on the demographics. Now, at a gross income or gross household income level, so this is basically gross household income for the different planning areas. You will also notice that the Marine Parade area, so if you focus on the orange, if you look at this pie chart, the orange and the light blue, that's basically anything above $15,000 and $20,000 of household income per month. So you'll notice that Marine Parade actually have a much larger share of the income compared to, say, in Bedok, which has 18 and 8. But generally, both, if you look at it compared to the Singapore population as a whole, they generally tend to be wealthier, but especially more so in the Marine Parade planning area, which has 28% of households that actually have a gross household income of more than 28% versus 14% for entire Singapore and 18% for Bedok. So generally, what I'm trying to say is that the Marine Parade area tend to be the prime working adults, which has a larger share of the income in Singapore. Okay. Now, okay, let's talk about some attractions. So, so the next few slides, I just want to share with people, for those who are maybe new to Singapore or may not be so familiar with Singapore, what are some of the key attractions in East Coast, right? So I think the most popular one, if you all have never been there, you should definitely visit, is obviously the East Coast Park. So annually, it receives 7.5 million visitors, right? That's more than Botanic Gardens' 4.5 million visitors per annum. So if you assume that people go there once a year, but definitely not once a year, right? You can assume that the entire Singapore has been to East Coast Park at least once a year. That's assuming the 7.5 million are unique individuals, but that's not the case. But you can see from the scale and from the picture that I'm showing you, which I took from Wikipedia, it shows you that East Coast Park is actually large, right? It goes all the way from Tanjong Rhu all the way to Bedok East and the Changi area. So it's the most popular park and the most popular attraction in East Coast. If you have not been there, maybe you can go there this evening. It tends to be pretty crowded in the evening, but yeah, definitely an interesting place. So definitely one of the most popular attraction in the East Coast area. So just some fun facts about East Coast. So it's actually part of the reclaimed land. And I think I wanted to share this point with you about land reclamation, is because later, we will be talking about the Long Island plan, which is also part of the plan for reclamation. So it started off as land reclamation, and Marine Parade Housing Estate, the HDBs in Marine Parade, is actually the first housing estate in Singapore to be built on reclaimed land. So just a bit of fun facts. Okay, so now today, if you think about East Coast, it's a place, I used to live in East Coast, so it's a place that is filled with what we call East Coast charm. You have the nice, colorful Peranakan houses on Hun Seng Road here. And then in terms of eateries, there's no shortage of choices, right? There's just so many interesting F&Bs, whether it's, nice cafes or whether it's fancy restaurants, or whether it's a nice pub where you can go get a drink in the evening. There's no shortage of choices. So you can get them at Joo Chiat Road, you can get them at East Coast Road. And then obviously you have if you have never heard of Katong Laksa, the 328 Katong Laksa is also in the East Coast area. So there's always, there is a range from affordable food choices all the way to high-end fancy restaurants, and you can find them here in East Coast. Okay. In terms of malls, obviously we have, I think the most popular one in the East Coast area is Parkway Parade, which is, I believe, managed by Lendlease. So it's one of the larger malls there. And then followed by I-12 Katong, which is a recently rejuvenated mall. So it's a mall by CapitaLand. So there's a lot of interesting concepts there after the rejuvenation. So for example, there's a central kitchen there where you can order foods from different places. They also have an experimental retail concept. So a smaller mall compared to Parkway Parade, but the idea is that it wants to basically brings in the different components or the different lifestyle and retail offerings into one small area, so that you don't actually have to walk that much, but you still get the different things that you need in that one mall. So it has recently been relaunched and rejuvenated. So if you haven't been there, go check it out as well. So and lastly, there are more than this, but these are some of the main malls. There's Katong V, which is a mall by Far East. So it's a smaller mall, but there's some nice F&B choices there as well, if you haven't had a chance to see it. Okay, so that is basically in terms of the lifestyle offerings that East Coast has. I mean, it's really a lot more than what I've shown you, but in the interest of time, I can just show you what are some of the main attractions for those of you who are not familiar with East Coast. So, okay, so there's also plenty of good schools, right? There's no shortage of good primary and secondary schools. So what I've done is I just looked at the schools in District 15, right? So these are some of the popular schools. CHIJ Katong, you have the Hague Girls School, you have Mian Primary, you have the Tanjong Katong Primary School. So that's just, this is basically the whole list of schools that are available in District 15, and these are, and some of these are really prominent good schools in Singapore. So I think that's one of the reasons why there's also a high degree of attendance here in this Marine Parade area, because you know, for primary schools you need to live within the 1 kilometer boundary. So a lot of parents chose to maybe they have an address that's outside of District 15, but they chose to rent in this area to give their kids a chance to attend some of these more popular schools in Singapore. So again, a bit of fun fact, our DPM and future PM Lawrence Wong actually attended the Hague Boys Primary School, which is now known as Tanjong Katong Primary School, as well as the Tanjong Katong Secondary School. Okay, so a bit of fun fact there as well. Okay, in terms of connectivity, right? So MRT stations are obviously a big part of the way Singaporeans and the people who live in Singapore travel, right? It's a big part of our commute and a big part of our connectivity in Singapore today. So if you look at the District 15 planning area, which is basically the boundaries that have been highlighted, there's no active MRT stations, right? The closest MRT stations are actually in a different district further north. So you have Stadium, Mountbatten, and the Dakota MRT stations, which is actually part of the Circle Line, right? The orange Circle Line, which brings you around the island, right? So there's no active MRT stations today. However, the Thomson East Coast Line, which I have mentioned earlier, will be a game changer for the East, right? And I will have data and facts to show you what I mean by why it's a game changer, right? So Thomson East Coast Line today, stage 1 and stage 2 are already operational. It goes all the way from Woodlands North, and if you complete all the stages, it actually goes all the way to Sungai Bedok in the east. And if you read the news recently, 9 more or 11 more MRT stations are going to be, which is part of stage 3, are going to be operational very shortly, by sometime this year. So it'll bring you through Orchard, and then obviously the main stage that is going to affect the East Coast area is actually stage 4, which is scheduled to open in 2024, 2 years from now. So it'll bring you through Founders Memorial, Tanjong Ru, Katong Park, Tanjong Katong, Marine Parade, Marine Terrace, all the way to Siglap, right? And then you have stage 5, which is the Bay Shore and the Sungai Bedok planning areas. So you can see that if you count, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 7 upcoming MRT stations in stage 4 of the Thomson East Coast Line, and the impact is going to be quite drastic to the housing and to the planning and to the lifestyle and to the convenience and connectivity of the East Coast planning area. Okay, because you can, it's only if you take from Tanjong Rhu, for example, it's only 9 or 10 stops away from Orchard, and previously there isn't any connectivity in terms of MRT connectivity for the East Coast. Okay, so Thomson East Coast Line is going to be very important. So I also have on the slide what are some of the interchange stations. What I mean by interchange is basically a station that has more than one line of connectivity. So for example, in Woodlands, Bright Hill, Caldecott, Stevens, Orchard, etc. So these are some of the lines where there has more than one line. Okay, so Thomson East Coast Line, something that definitely you should watch out for the East Coast area. So now, obviously, this Thomson East Coast Line will connect us to the rest of the lines, right? So if you talk about the East-West line today, right, which is probably one of the most used line in Singapore in terms of MRT connectivity. You also have the Cross Island line, which is also upcoming, and you have the downtown line as well. So it basically government's initiative to enhance connectivity in the east. So this is something that I want to share with you as a broader picture, how Thomson East Coast Line connects with the rest of the connectivity in Singapore. Okay, moving on. So if you look at this slide here, so basically I'll explain to you what the different color plots means, but basically all the color plots shows these are the recently en bloc or recently GLS slides, basically slides that are recently sold or recently launched. So you can see that there's a lot of activities over the last few years in the upcoming Katong Park MRT areas, as well as the Tanjong Katong MRT areas as well. So later I'll show you what are some of these projects. So if you are interested, some of these names to keep in mind, but you can see that there have been a lot of launches in this area over the last few years. Okay, now this is also an interesting slide, which I was doing my research and I managed to discover, thought it'd be good to share this with you. Basically, this chart here shows you the resale prices of apartments and condos in District 15, which is the blue line, compared to the resale prices for the rest of Singapore, right? So in terms of price appreciation, so these are quarterly prices and quarterly volumes. So in terms of the price appreciation over the last 10 years, you will notice that the blue line, which has always been lower than the orange line, have basically shot past the orange line over the last 6-7 quarters, right? So definitely this is due to the Thomson East Coast Line announcement, which I think, that's why I mentioned it will be a game changer for this area. So in terms of price appreciation over the last 15 years, the resale prices in District 15 have gone up 35% versus 27.5% nationwide, right? So the prices in East Coast have actually surpassed the nationwide prices. So I thought this is an interesting chart to share with you for today's discussion, because you can see that it has consistently outpaced the rest of the regions in Singapore. Okay, now if you're looking at property and if you're thinking what are some of the most popular resale projects in District 15, so basically I've ranked them for you based on the number of sales volume over the last 12 months. Okay, so this is basically the resale properties in District 15 over the last 12 months. So the most popular one is Costa Roo, which is located in the Tanjong Rhu area, but you also have the bigger developments like Mandarin Gardens, Flamingo Valley, Côte d'Azur, and whatnot. Okay, so these are the sales volume over the last 12 months. You also have other data like average prices, rental yield, and number of units and foreign ownership as well. We'll share these slides with you after the end of this presentation. So if you want to find out more about this, this is something that you could refer to. So, but I just wanted to show you with you to give you some understanding of what are some of the popular resale condos in District 15 over the last 12 months. And these are the ones that are, driving up the prices that I've shown you in that chart earlier. I think the same can also be seen for landed properties in resale 15 as well. So I think if you are familiar with District 15, the Telok Kurau, East Coast area, there's a lot of landed properties, and you can see again the blue line is District 15 and the orange line is for landed properties around Singapore. You can see that the price appreciation for landed properties for District 15 East Coast have also surpassed the price appreciation nationwide as well. So over the last 10 years, on a quarterly basis, the price has gone up by 33% versus 28.6% nationwide. Okay. The second major transformation that I want to talk about very quickly is this Long Island concept, right? So I think you may have heard about this in PM's National Day rally in 2019, but it was also recently brought up as part of the URA exhibition. This idea of Long Island along the east coast of Singapore, right, basically is another plan to reclaim more land for that area, but it actually goes beyond that, right? The objective is actually for coastal and flood protection. And I think we are all aware of climate changes, and Singapore being an island is obviously exposed to the inherent risks that we face when it comes to climate changes, right? And I think you will see that recently that even in our neighboring country, Malaysia, there's a lot of flooding issues as well. So climate issue is real, and I think the Long Island concept is actually to address these climate issues, right? But beyond that, it also acts as a water reservoir, right? So if you can see from the picture here, it also acts as a water reservoir like the Marina Barrage. And lastly, with the reclaimed land, you also have additional space to build new housing and to build new amenities and to build new recreational spaces, right? So that is going to be a massive new developments in this area if it does actually happen. And now, if you live in the East Coast and if you are facing one of the fortunate ones that live in a high-rise condo that faces the sea, you would notice that the ECP tends to be can get quite noisy at times, right? So I think part of the idea or the thinking behind this Long Island concept is to move some of this traffic underground, right? So when this traffic goes underground, it reduces noise pollution in that area, and it also frees up space for additional housing, additional amenities, right? Now, as I was doing this, it's actually interesting to think that now, obviously, if cost is not an issue, we could move all traffic underground, and the amount of space that can be freed up for, whether it's new housing, new offices, new malls, the space that can be freed up from moving traffic underground is actually quite immense, right? So I think this is something that they are also exploring as part of the Long Island concept, whether some of this traffic can be moved underground. So basically, that is the objective of this Long Island concept. So one, it offers coastal and flood protection. Two, it acts as a water reservoir. Three, it provides additional spaces, whether it's for recreational or for housing, and also partially to move some of this road traffic underground as well. Now, this idea is actually not a new idea. It has been talked about in the 1991 concept plan, for example. And if you look at the 2013 land use plan put up by MND on MND's website, you can see that it has always been marked. So if you look at this map here, it has always been marked as a reserve site. So reserve site is yellow, right? So there's always been planned to do something about the East Coast area, right? So whether it's to like what I said in the previous slide, whether it's to build a new Long Island area or whether it's used for any other purposes, but it has always been earmarked as a reserve site. So it's not something new that has been talked about. It has been talked about for decades. to be honest, right? And PM recently brought it up again during the National Day rally in 2019. And as I mentioned, this whole topic became hot again when URA put up its exhibition recently, right, in URA Center. And I think, as Desmond pointed out earlier, I think the exhibition is still ongoing in URA Center. It's not just about East Coast, it's about the entire Singapore. So if you haven't had the chance to go there, please do, it's free. And I think there's also guided tours as well. So if you would like to pay a visit, I think you will understand a lot more about this idea as well. And you can also give your feedback. Okay, so it's not a new idea. Now, some of you may be wondering what's going to happen, right, because we are talking about a massive area, and I was reading some of the news report. If the Long Island concept does happen, it will provide additional 10 to 12,000 units of new housing. So what's the impact on some of these developments today that is along the coast, right? So I was looking at some of these: Belvedere, Seafront, Atria, Mayor Park, Mayor East. So some of these developments, whether it's going to be affected in terms of the views, actually, to be honest, I don't know, and I don't think anyone except for the insiders at URA know what is the actual plan for this. But I think even if there is plan to build additional housing, the impact for now will be negligible, because generally most of these condos along the coast, along Mayor Road, they are all freehold condos, right? Firstly, and this is a long-term plan. So I don't know when the plan will actually materializes, but I included this in this presentation because I believe that if it does happen, it's going to be one of the major transformation that's going to happen to East Coast as well. And I believe even if there's new housing plan for that area, there will be height restrictions, right, put in place, because the views for some of these high-rise condos, if there is no height restrictions, it will definitely be affected, and there will definitely be a lot of complaints. So how does one deal with it? Perhaps it's by putting in height restrictions for the newer condos. So for now, I don't have an answer whether what's the impact on these existing developments. On the flip side, you can think about it as enhancing the values of the existing developments, right? Because when you're talking about this Long Island concept, first, it protects you from potential flood or potential climate change issues. Secondly, there will also be new amenities, right? So it may provide the residents that are currently in this area new access, new choices of different amenities and different lifestyle offerings as part of this Long Island plan. So the pros and cons, may just outweigh each other, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. Okay. So the third major transformation that I want to talk about for East Coast Plan is actually slightly further to the east. It actually is outside of District 15, all the way at the Bayshore and Bedok South, upcoming Bayshore and Bedok South MRT stations, which is this concept of redeveloping the Bedok South Bayshore area. Okay, so now what is the plan? So this is in URA's website. Again, this is also in URA Center. So the idea here is to basically promote healthy living near the sea or near the East Coast area, right? You would have a main stretch which is called the Bayshore Main Street. So basically, mobility will be prioritized. Mobility in the sense of walking, cycling, and also buses, right? So where there will be new shops, new F&B offerings, new iconic places along this Bayshore Main Street. Now, if you've been to Barcelona, if you've been to Las Ramblas, it's kind of like that, where you have different interesting options along this major street where people are just walking, cycling, or just taking a stroll, with their dogs or with their kids. So that's the whole idea of this Bayshore Bay Street, and it will also be connected to the East Coast Park by this landscape bridge that is also planned for that area. What other interesting things are there? Okay, there's also this seawall concept here. So basically, if you look at this line here, so this line here used to be the previous coastal line, right? So I think you can see some of the signs that are being preserved. So, and the idea here is basically to educate the residents about land reclamation, right? It's also to educate the residents about where the coastal line used to be. So it'll be sort of like a memorial walk, immense with sort of historical teachings and historical values along this conserved, what they call conserved sea pavilion and the old sea wall. So there'll be, so this is basically the attractions and the amenities planned for the area. But beyond that, right, there's also new housing options. So this is 600,000 square meter of space, right, which according to some analysts, it will provide 12,500 new homes, right? So if you look at the two previous master plans, right, if you go to our website, or if you go to URA website, you can see what are some of the thinking behind the planning for this area. So if you look at, on the left-hand side, if you look at the Master Plan 2014, right? So with orange, if you refer to the legend, so when you read the Master Plan or when you try to analyze the Master Plan, always read it with the legend because there's so many different colors. Otherwise, you will not understand what it actually means. In the 2014 Master Plan, a lot of these orange basically residential areas, right? But it says it's subject to detailed planning. So there's no things like plot ratio, what kind of residential development it will be, whether it's HDB, whether it's private housing, whether it's integrated. There isn't a lot of plans, but that plan has been refined and remodeled in the latest master plan. So now you will see there's actually plot ratios, right? So you can even see for this light blue 2.8 plot ratio piece of land is zoned as an integrated development, right? So integrated development, if you've been attending our last two weekends webinars, we talk a lot about integrated developments, right? And I think it's government's initiative to sort of promote living and connectivity. And integrated developments are becoming more popular these days, and it tends to do well among Singaporeans and among the residents in Singapore. So there is actually a big plot of land that is zoned for integrated development. You'll connect you directly to the Bedok South MRT station, right? And then you have the rest that are zoned for a mixture of private housing and HDB. Which plot is going to be private housing and which plot is going to be HDB, we don't know yet. But you can kind of guess from the plot ratio. So the numbers here are plot ratio. So HDBs generally tend to have a higher density, higher plot ratio compared to some of the low-rise or some of the private developments. It's not always true, but generally that's the trend. But there have been no announcement as to which plot is going to be HDB and which plot is going to be private housing. But you can see that there's actually been a lot more thought put into this process over the last two master plan. Okay, so again, this is an important thing to highlight, an important area that that's going to provide new additional housing and new additional amenities for the Bayshore area. Okay, now housing options around the Bayshore seen today. These are some of the popular developments, right? The two biggest developments, if you are looking at moving to this area to capitalize on this upcoming Bayshore Precinct development, is the Bayshore, which has 1,038 units. It has an average selling price of 1,085, and you have Costa del Sol as well, which is the development right next to it, which is the one that is closer to the coast. It has 906 units. It has a higher average PSF compared to Bayshore. So these are some of the bigger developments that you can consider, but there's also the rest of the smaller developments in this area as well. These are the existing housing options within 500 meters of the upcoming Bayshore MRT station. I also quickly take a look at the price appreciation and the volumes of these two developments over the last 10 years. You can see for the Bayshore, the prices have gone up whereas Costa del Sol have gone up 20.6%. And if you're wondering why, I think we can have a separate session on this because there are many reasons why this is the case. Although the two developments are of similar age, one is I think 4 years younger, which is the Costa del Sol is the younger development, whereas Bayshore is the older development. But there are many reasons to explain the difference in price appreciation, especially for Costa del Sol, right? You can see that the prices have gone up quite a bit over the last 2 quarters. But I cannot go in depth into this because, but if you are interested to find out more, let us know, and perhaps we can have another session or something on this. Okay. Okay. So I've been talking a lot about the resale housing options in East Coast. So now I want to move on to what are the new housing options, right? What are the new launches have been like? What are the upcoming sites that you should watch out for? So in terms of new developments, right? So if you look at District 15 over the last 3 to 4 years, right? There have been a number of launches. In fact, 23 projects have been launched over the last 3 to 4 years. A lot of these are the smaller developments, aside from, I think, Seaside Residences and Amber Park, which has more than 500 units. The rest of the developments are generally smaller developments, which is typical of the East Coast development, right? I think in the previous list, which I've shown you, you only get 1 or 2 big projects, but there's a lot of smaller developments. But generally, all these developments have done very well, right? You have 23 projects launched, out of which 94% have been sold, which is more than 2,500 units, right? And the remaining units are only 160 out of the 2,756 units that have been launched. Now, obviously, District 15 is, as you know, very popular, right? The only ones with remaining units are the ones I highlighted, for example, Amber Park, Live at Amby, which is the latest launch in District 15. And then along Mayor Road, you have Mayor Mansion as well, but generally they don't have that many units left, okay? As I mentioned, Live at Amby was the last launch in District 15, if my research is correct. And if you remember District 15, when it was first launched, 75% of its units were sold during the launch weekend. So you can see the popularity of an East Coast development, okay? Okay, what's more interesting, right, is the upcoming sites in East Coast. This gets me pretty excited because I've talked a lot about this. If you think about the last 3-4 years, there have been 2,700, 2,800 units that have been launched. But over the next 1-2 years, these 4 sites are going to contribute 3,300 units, right? And if you think about the planning or the thinking behind this, it's actually pretty amazing, right? So over the years, there hasn't been, in terms of connectivity, there's only the Circle Line, right, which is Dakota, Mountbatten, and Stadium NRT station. But with the new connectivity driven by the Thomson East Coast Line, you can expect more housing options, because I think the infrastructure needs to be in place before the housing can come in, right? Because if you're housing and without infrastructure, and if everybody starts driving, this whole area is going to be pretty congested. And if you are familiar with East Coast, some of the roads can be pretty small, especially around the landed housing, right? So if one car goes, the other can't go, you have to stop and wait. So if there is no infrastructure to support this new housing, it cannot be sustained. But as I explained, with the upcoming Thomson East Coast Line, which will help reduce congestion, there is a possibility for this new housing. So I will talk about these 4 different sites, right? You have basically so I want to explain a bit how you read the different colors, right? So basically the purple and the blue are GLS. So GLS are basically government land sales sites. So these are sites sold by the government to the private developers. Whereas the yellow and orange sites are the sites that are already in place and then it's sold via collective sale or en bloc to a private developer. It's through a private channel as opposed to the government sales channel, right? So there are 4 sites that I want to focus on, Tiam Siu Avenue, Dunman, and then you have Jalan Tembusu 1 and Jalan Tembusu 2 lah. I just call it as Jalan Tembusu 1 and Jalan Tembusu 2 because both sides basically is one on the other of Jalan Tembusu. These 4 sites combined will provide 3,300 units of housing. I'll quickly touch on each of these sites. So the one that is most likely to be launched first, because it was the first one that has been bought, is this Tiam Siu Avenue site. So if you're familiar with Tiam Siu Avenue, basically these are old landed developments that have recently been bought by Hoi Hub and Sunway. It's freehold, right? So it was purchased back in November 2021 for almost 1.1 billion, right? Now, if you look at the site, potentially you could build 2 new developments, right? But from our understanding is that it's going to be one development, but there's a road that is cutting across it. And that road is actually not owned by the developer unless they purchase the road, which costs more money. I don't think the plan is for the developer to purchase the road. So what they're going to do instead is they're going to build like a link bridge, that connects these 2 developments. Maybe one side could be amenities, one side could be housing. I don't know what's the plan yet, and it hasn't been announced by the developer, but it's most likely going to be launched either very end of this year or early next year. So it's an interesting site because it's 2 plots that will be connected by a bridge, right? So in terms of number of units that this site can yield, we estimated that it will yield up to 820 units. And based on our calculation of the price that they paid for, as well as the ongoing construction cost, we estimate that it will probably be launched at 2,700 PSF for a freehold development. And this is the only freehold development out of the 4 sites that I mentioned. So if you are interested in D15 and interested in new housing options, this is definitely one of the sites to watch out for. Okay, the second site is the Jalan Tembusu site, right? So it was bought by CDL, City Development. And if you don't know who CDL is one of the largest, if not the largest developer in Singapore, right? So it was purchased for 768 million. So now all government land sales sites today are leasehold, right? There's no freehold government land sales site. So you're looking for freehold new launch, it has to come from the collective sales or from the en bloc market. There's no options around it. So this is a 99-year GLS site. Now the good thing about this site as compared to say Tiam Siu Avenue is that I think it will be relatively more affordable than Tiam Siu, because if you are looking at the tender price and based on our estimates, it will probably be launched at 2,400 PSF. And now this site can yield up to 640 units. Again, it's quite a massive development if you think of East Coast in general. As I showed you earlier, a lot of the launches in East Coast tends to be less than 500 units, but this is going to be 640 units. Yet it is the smallest among the 4 sites that are upcoming, right? So Jalan Tembusu is one of them. It's by CDL. Again, I don't know when they're going to be launched. They acquired this earlier this year, so we expect it to be launched sometime early next year as well. And the third site is this Dunman site. So it was also a government land sales site. It was bought by Singhai for $1.28 billion, right? Now, the interesting part or the key selling point about this site is that it's actually located right beside the Dakota MRT station. Now, the previous 2 sites I mentioned, the Tiam Siu site as well as the Tembusu site, is not right beside the MRT, right? So you have to walk or you have to commute to get to the MRT. But this site is actually located right beside the Dakota MRT station, right? So that is going to be its unique advantage or unique selling point for this site. So as I mentioned, the developer paid a lot of money for it. It's 1.28 billion, and it can build up to 1,035 units, right? And it has, based on our calculation, it will be higher than the selling price for Jalan Tembusu, but you'll probably be lower than the Tiam Siu site, which is freehold. Again, typically, if you compare leasehold to freehold, freehold tends to command a 10% premium, right? Or 10-15% premium over a leasehold site. Generally, that's the case in Singapore. It's not always true, but typically that's the case. Okay, so again, the Dunman site is an interesting site to look out for. I also want to share this with you. So if you look at East Coast, this District 15 today, so this is basically what I'm showing you here. The red bounded zones or the red boundaries are basically all the landed developments, right? This area has been zoned for landed properties, and it will always be zoned as landed properties unless it's the whole area is rezoned, which is very unlikely, right? So now the benefit of being surrounded by landed areas or landed enclave is that you would have unblocked views, right? So if you're on a high floor, you will have unblocked views. So for Dunman as well as for Jalan Tembusu site, I think they will have some of the facings will have the benefit of unblocked views. So again, these are the advantage for these two sites. Okay. Now, very quickly, the last site that I want to talk about, which is the Jalan Tembusu 2 site, right? It will be launched for sale. So it hasn't been sold to any private developer yet. It will be launched for sale in November 2022. Okay, it will yield up to 825 units, right? So it will be interesting to see who's the developer for this. So typically the planning process for private developer is about 1 year from the date they buy the site to the date they launch it. But that's a general rule of thumb. Okay, so that's definitely, in terms, if you compare to the first Jalan Tembusu site, obviously it's closer to the coast, closer to the upcoming Thomson East Coast line, right? But we don't know what the pricing, perhaps it could be higher, it could be lower, but we don't know. But generally, that's another site that we should also watch out for these two, for the District 15 planning areas. Okay. I just want to quickly summarize, because I think there's a lot of things that I've mentioned, right, for these 4 different sites. Each site has its own unique advantage and disadvantage, right? I think when it comes to buying property, no one property is the same. There's always pros and cons, but you need to understand what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and what are the pros and cons, right? So for Tiam Siu, obviously the pros is it's freehold, right? And it also has the benefit of the first mover advantage, because if you are the first one to launch, if you're looking at the same catchment area, definitely it could benefit from that. What could be turned into an advantage or perhaps a slight disadvantage is the site layout, right? Because as I mentioned, it's 2 different plots connected by a bridge. But that can be turned into an advantage if the developer plans it well. So relative con is that definitely it will be priced at a higher price than, say, the Jalan Tembusu and the Dunman site. Okay, so Jalan Tembusu, I think it will probably have the lowest PSF PPR for this area, hence it will be launched at probably the most affordable pricing as compared to the other site. It's also a simple site, right? Now, the benefit of a government land sale site is that typically it's simple, the process is simple, the site is squarish, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do with a squarish site versus, say, an oval shaped site, or a slightly weird shaped site. So I think the benefit of government land sale site is that it's always tend to be simpler to plan, and also branding, right? So as I mentioned, CDL is one of the largest developers in Singapore, and branding always helps. So these are, I don't want to go through everything. I will share these slides with you so you can think about it when it comes to your purchase decisions as well. So basically the point here is that different sites have different advantages and disadvantages. Okay? Okay, so I just want to end this quickly. I think I talked a lot about the Marine Parade planning area as well as Bedok South planning area. But actually, East Coast is huge, right? So if you're talking about further east, you have different commerce activities, right? You have Changi Airport, obviously, with Jewel as the mall. Then you have Changi Business Park, you have Pasir Ris Waterfed Park, and then you have Bedok Food City. So I think as part of URA's ambition to live well, to work well, and to play well, right? These are definitely part of the plan, right? You're talking about housing options in District 15 and Bayshore Precinct, right? The new housing options. You're also talking about connectivity, right? Where you can work anywhere and everywhere, right? For example, the Thomson East Coast Line is going to enhance connectivity for the east. And then you're talking about play, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, you have East Coast Park, and then you have the new Bayshore Main Street and the Bayshore Sea Walk, and you also be able to move more efficiently lah. Okay. One thing that I didn't have a chance to cover, but again, if you would like, if you go down to the URA Center, you can see that Singapore has these identity corridors, right? And the historic east is one of these identity corridors. Basically, is preservation of the existing culture, right? It's also to promote healthy living, so that you'll have dedicated cycling track, dedicated walking track all along this path. Okay, so so that concludes my presentation. Now again, thank you for watching. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. I can't promise you that I'll answer all the different questions. So this East Coast discussion, or East Coast MasterPlan Masterclass, is actually the last of our MasterPlan Masterclass as part of our National Day campaign. But if you'd like to learn more about the different areas or the different planning areas, so we have so far covered 6 different planning areas, right? But if you'd like to learn more about the different planning areas, you could leave them in the feedback form, and then obviously we could also organize sessions around it. Additionally, if you would like to learn more about how we use our different tools and research to discover the price trends and discover options for housing, you can also let us know, because then we can also plan around it, right? So thank you for watching.
Okay, so maybe actually the first question is in regards to when you were showing the demographics, right? And YL has a question on the age group. Does it apply to both owners and tenants?
The demographics is basically all the households in that planning area. It doesn't break down whether they are owners or tenants. So it's for both, yeah. Okay,
and next question is updates on the Tanjong Rhu area. PSS is relatively lower in RCR bearing projects. That are bigger and older. So is there still an upside?
For Tanjong Rhu, okay. So Tanjong Rhu, I have friends that live in Tanjong Rhu, and this is their typical complaint. How come the prices for Tanjong Rhu hasn't moved compared to other areas? So I think, as I mentioned, Tanjong Rhu MRT station is one of the stations as part of the Thomson East Coast line. So I think the prices may benefit from it. The other thing that is interesting to watch out for is, if you're familiar with Tanjong Rhu, you will know that there is the Marina Bay Golf Course, right? And what the government has planned for Marina Bay Golf Course, which we don't know yet. It is a wide site. So I think if the plan entails rejuvenation for the whole area, then yes, potentially the impact could be quite big for the existing Tanjong Rhu development. Hope that answers that.
Okay. And price appreciation, I think you mentioned that based on the Tiam Siu sites, right? Only one of it is freehold, the others being leasehold, and there's a price premium of between 10 to 15%. But in terms of appreciation, rate of appreciation, how does that?
I think we have done a study on this, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think there's any difference in terms of the growth in price appreciation for both freehold and leasehold. But I can't recall, to be honest, so I would need to get back on that question. But if you'd like to learn more, let us know so that we can organize sessions around this, how to use our different tools to help you answer some of these questions. Because to be honest, when you talk about things like this, you can also ask, for example, whether a 30-year-old condo, freehold, leasehold, what are the pros and cons, right? So the questions and the variables are endless. It's impossible to answer all the questions. So what we can provide is we enable you with the tools to do this kind of research yourself, simple tools that you can use, and you can do your own analysis for the different areas. So if that's something that's interesting to the audience out there, please let us know, and we will organize sessions for it.
So a lot of viewers have got different needs and wants. You want to compare different things: freehold, leasehold, RCR, OCR, and all that. So, like Bernard pointed out, we have a suite of tools that enables you to put in your own variables. Okay, and so you mentioned also that this East Coast area stretches all the way until until towards Changi, right? Will we see any benefits towards the tail end of Changi? Do we see any spillover, or not really spillover, but effects on the market?
You're talking about I suppose the question is on the Long Island developments. I think to be honest, the plan is not very clear yet, right? We know the broad picture or the broad objectives of this Long Island, which is mainly to address climate change issues. But I think Changi requires a separate understanding or separate discussion or different session for Changi alone, right? Because Changi is huge. You're talking about Changi Business Park, you're talking about Changi Airport, which is going to come back post-COVID, right? And then you're talking about the Changi amenities like Jewel Mall and whatnot. So I think for Changi, it can definitely be considered as a separate planning area and it will require a separate discussion. Yeah.
Okay, and with this, the Long Island, how will it affect the prices of condos and HDB facing the sea?
Yeah, so I think I tried to address this in my slide. So it can be both pros and cons, right? I think if Long Island concept help address flooding issues, right? Definitely it's a plus. Because if you're living along the coast and if your area keeps getting flooded every day, it's also no point, right? So if you have Long Island that addresses these climate change issues, it's a plus. Whether the view, and then you pay a premium for the view, right? Whether it's going to be blocked or not, actually nobody knows. Obviously, if your view is going to be blocked, then definitely yes, your valuation will be affected. But I think there will definitely be height restrictions imposed, right, on these new future developments. So maybe yes, at certain floors you will be affected, but at the high floors you may not be affected if the height restrictions are put in place. But obviously we won't know until the plan is released. So I think you can look at it from both perspectives. There are pros and cons to this.
All right. So, and then with this increase in supply in the market around this area, right, will that affect rental adversely? Okay, so I think rental in Singapore generally have gone through the roof, right? I think if we analyze rental, actually it correlates very well with interest rates. When interest rates go up, rental goes up, right? Now, obviously with incoming influx of supply, in the short term, yes, it may dampen the rental market, but don't forget, right? The East Coast never had MRT stations, right? So now with the Thomson East Coast Line and connectivity, that is definitely going to increase the rental demand. So again, I think when you analyze property and you think about properties, there are always moving variables. You cannot just look at one element and say, oh, this is going to drop or this is going to increase. Like who would have predicted that COVID actually accelerated property prices and rental prices, right? So I think if you're talking about East Coast, yes, I think the supply is going to come in, yet the infrastructure is there to support it, right? People want to live close to MRT stations, right? Because of connectivity, and Thomson East Coast Line is actually very well connected because you can get to Orchard, you can get to the north in Woodlands, right? Or you can get to Changi as well. So I think all in all, it's probably going to be a plus for rental demand. But generally, rental demand is driven by interest rates and owners' expectations. Because if my mortgage is going to go up, I'm going to ask for this rental, right? I think generally it's if you try to understand rental market, it's as simple as that. Mm-hmm. So meaning to say, like with increase in supply, the demand will actually match up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Then this question on cooling measures. Do you think the government will introduce more rounds of cooling measures to curb the hike?
I mean, to be honest, there have been thoughts and speculations, like anything in the market, right? whether it will actually materializes, I think only people in the government would know. And I don't want to comment too much in case there are government officials watching. So. But if there is, you'll be the first to know if you are on EdgeProp's Telegram.
Right. Okay. I think in this whole stretch of East Coast, Wee Ming also asked about Bedok, any development of potential, and then in his follow-up question, he asked a little bit about Sky Eden. Any comments on that?
Yeah, so I didn't have time to address that because I think I wanted to focus more on the coastal area. But yes, Sky Eden is basically the redevelopment of Bedok Point, right? It's further inland, it's near the Bedok Mall, the existing Bedok Mall. That area hasn't had any launches in recent years. I think the last launch was Bedok Residences, which was launched by CapitaLand. And if you remember the launch of Bedok Residences, there were actually people queuing to get into the preview to the launch when it was launched back then. So I expect Sky Eden to generally do well, but obviously it boils down to the pricing point. But that is, I guess, more heartland Bedok as opposed to the coastal Bedok. But if you're interested, for audience out there, if you're interested to learn more about Sky Eden, let us know in the feedback, and then we can arrange for whether it's an agent to speak to you or the developer to speak to you or something like that. Yeah.
And on that note, we've also put up the link to our Telegram channel in the chat. So if you're interested to follow us on Telegram, refer to the chats. Okay, is there a timeline for the Long Island concept to be decided upon?
Well, no, I think what the URA is doing now is they're seeking feedback from the public, right? So I think it has been, like I said, it's not a new concept. It was brought up in 1991 as part of the long-term concept plan. And it was recently revived again. So I think if it's recently revived, I think you would kind of know that the intention is real. What is the timeline? We actually don't know yet. So we have to wait and see. I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be the next 5-10 years thing. Right? I think next 5-10 years is getting the MRT stations up, making sure there's enough housing, enough supply, and then we can probably talk about Long Island. So it's probably more a long-term thing, more than 10 years. So government now is seeking feedback. So if you go to URA Center, you can give them your feedback. So.
Right. Okay, TAM has a question on PLQ. So he or she says, I'm surprised the mention of PLQ in the presentation. Isn't that quite significant for the real estate market in D15? But I think PLQ is D4.
Yeah, PLQ is more Geylang, right? Sims Avenue, Geylang area. So as I mentioned, I just want to focus more on the coastal area. But if you're interested, we can, and there's enough demand for it, we can have a different session for Paya Lebar. And yes, there's definitely a lot of things to talk about Paya Lebar. You have the Paya Lebar Airbase, right? That's going to move out, and the concept planning for Paya Lebar, which comes with new integrated developments, new housing, and whatnot.
Okay, interesting question. East Coast area around Mayor Road and Tanjong Katong Road prices have gone up close to Bukit Timah or Holland area, where previously they used to be priced much lower. Alright, so East Coast area is not considered prime core central area yet. Prices are the same and sometimes higher. Have the prices gone ahead due to optimism of upcoming MRT line? So you've spoken a lot about the MRT line.
Yeah. So and I also share in one of the slides, it will show you that the resale prices for East Coast have now actually gone higher than the national resale prices, right? And yes, I think a majority of the factor is due to the Thomson East Coast line. Whether there is future price appreciation, who knows?
And a lot of comparison. Basically, a lot of people are asking about comparison between.
Yeah, so I think I was looking at the questions. A lot of comparison about this project versus that project, and why this has gone up, why this hasn't gone up. I mean, there are many factors, and I think what we'll do is. Thank you for the questions. Firstly, what we'll do is we'll probably try to turn these questions into our research analysis for our future articles to compare project A, project B, and some of the bigger developments lah. Like for example, Bayshore versus Costa del Sol, right? Costa del Sol prices have gone up so much, but Bayshore hasn't gone up that much. Why, right? Similarly for Eastern Lagoon 1, Eastern Lagoon 2. So I think there's a lot of questions about that, which I think is beyond the scope of today's discussion, but we'll definitely turn this into our own research and analysis for your reading. Okay.
Hang on, wait. Did you come across in your research on resort development in Bayshore?
Resort development?
Yeah.
No, I don't see there's anything zoned for hotels or for resort based on the existing master plan. I think there's a lot of residential, right? There's the main street that I talked about. There's one integrated development. Perhaps that integrated development could have a hotel component, right? So that could be sort of resort lifestyle thing. Yeah, I think if there's any likelihood of a hotel or resort, it's probably going to be that plot of land which is integrated with Bayshore MRT station. Bedok South MRT station. Yeah.
So this in response to Priscilla Ho's question, but if you have insights, do let us know.
Yeah, we're always looking for insights and scoop. Please let us know.
Let me browse through the questions again. Okay, maybe this one is more general, right? So how big a size of land is considered too big for developers in terms of collective sales?
Actually, this is a tough question. I think if you are looking at the recent collective sales market, the recent successful en blocs, right? If you look at Lakeside in Jurong and the one beside it, anything more than $1 billion or even 700-800 million is going to be tough for one developer to swallow unless they come in via JV. So the recently successful one are always 400 to 500 million, right? So in terms of scale, yeah, it's something to think about. Like if you're buying and hoping for en bloc in a large development, right, your chances are going to be slimmer. We have done this analysis actually. We have analyzed successful en blocs versus those that are not successful, and what are the factors that determine the success of an en bloc, right? So the factors that will increase the likelihood of success, one is the size of the development. The smaller it is, the more likely for success, but it cannot be too small, then there's no scale advantage. So you have to, a medium size property tends to generally be more successful in en blocs because firstly, it's easier to get signatures, right? Versus a large development. And secondly, the cost is probably more acceptable or easier for a private developer to swallow. The second is the age of the development, obviously. Older buildings tend to be more successful in terms of getting it en bloc versus newer buildings, right? Because older buildings, you have to spend a lot of cost to maintain it. It's quite run down. So instead of spending so much cost, might as well just sell it. That's always the thinking. And thirdly is also what is the price premium of this development over the surrounding areas, right? So if the price premium of the newer buildings in your neighborhood is higher than your existing or your reserve price, that will also increase your likelihood of en bloc.
So whether you live in an area or not, I hope we have given you a little bit more information on the area for your property purchases. I hope you've enjoyed this NDP MasterPlan Masterclass series. Over the past Saturdays, we've talked about the Newton Novena, Outram, Bugis, Lentor, and this week the CBD Tanjong Pagar and East Coast area. We've developed a very comprehensive suite of tools to help us with these analysis. And you can try them out at EdgeProp.sg too. Right? Singapore's real estate landscape is ever changing and will continue to do so. So similarly, we'll continue to bring you data-driven analysis, breaking news on interesting transactions, and also interviews with the movers and shakers of the property industry. So with that, I'll be signing out. My name is Kawi, and your company has been a great pleasure.